Jesus. I actually didn't plan that. I don't know. That came to me as we were singing. But spiritual authority came to us through the blood of Jesus, because it marked out that we are now in right standing with God. And because we are in right standing, we are given the ability to act as agents of God upon this earth. And that's where spiritual authority comes in. We're gonna divide this up in several different ways. We're gonna talk about the overarching to start forward, but then we got to have a beginning, and we're going to talk about that, what that beginning looks like. Because I was thinking about this back there. And that's the problem, is it feels like I get more stuff, in the last hour before I get up to speak than I do the entire time I study. It's like you're studying and you're reading and you're kind of putting some things together, and then you're here, you're kind of praying, you're worshiping and everything else. And it's like you start getting more stuff. And I was thinking about in T-ball. Do any of y'all remember T-ball or had kids that were in T-ball or anything else? And in T-ball, there's two kids. There's two types of kid. Maybe probably more, but for my illustration, there's going to be two types of kid. There is the kid who goes home and he practices hitting. His dad has put a rope with a ball on it so that kid knows where to connect. He pitches to him and he'll catch it. He'll catch it and he'll help that kid get better. And then there's the kid that just shows up for practice. And he's just happy to be out there. And unfortunately, I feel like sometimes we in church are the kid that just shows up for practice and games. That we're not doing the things outside that are needed for glory. I don't know. This is an evolving sermon. Stay with me, please. I've got a quote up here. And this quote is from a guy by the name of Herman Kahn. And it said, authority is not power, that's coercion. Authority is not knowledge, for that's persuasion or seduction. Authority is simply that the author has the right to make a statement and be heard. Authority. Now, many of us are familiar with the authorities that are in our everyday life. The policemen, our teachers, various and assorted. And as you get older, you have less present authorities, and you're expected to be more of an authority. And some people don't make that transition very gracefully. They continue to live life like when they weren't in authority. And sometimes that leads to having run-ins with authorities. But we're going to start out here with a verse. Jesus wanted you in authority over your life. Jesus wanted you in authority in other people's lives. He didn't call you to be sedate. He didn't call you to live on an island. And so in Luke 10:19, I give you the what of what we're talking about. He says, look, I have given you authority over all the power of the enemy, and you can walk among snakes and scorpions and crush them. Nothing will injure you. The disciples had come back from a successful campaign where Jesus had sent them out 2 by 2 to go minister around the countryside. And they were just amazed at what was going on. And Jesus said, yes, I've given you authority to go do that. And that's one of the two ways that authority is passed. Authority can be passed by a greater power. In the case of our police officers, it's passed by the government. They said, if you mistreat a police officer, you're against the state of Illinois. Or, in the case of a teacher, the school system has a certain power, and they put a teacher in power over a group of students, and that teacher then has the authority that if she says something goes, then the students have to respect it. then there's the other type of authority. And that's a much harder thing to get a hold of. And that is earned authority. Earned authority. Earned authority is led by how you lead your life. It's a guy at work that he doesn't get thrown when things go wrong. He's always willing to help others. People listen to him because he's wise, because he pays attention to what he's doing. He's not just clocking in and clocking out. He's trying to do what he knows best. And those people are given authority. While they may not have a title, they're the guy everybody goes to. And sometimes in some offices, that's the secretary. She's the one that knows everything, and we all go to her, and she says, well, you're going to need to be over here today, and everything else. And it's not that she's a greater authority than the principal. It's just that she's kind of the liaison between the principal and the teachers and kind of knows what's going on. And so she kind of can give you marching orders on what you're supposed to do. So authority may not have a major title, but it's earned by what we do. We all like to go to somebody that knows what's going on. And in the kingdom of Christ, that's really important. We see the verse that Paul talks about. He said, guess what, people? We're not dealing with normal situations. You're not dealing with people. But according to Ephesians 6:12, you're dealing with the world. We are not fighting against flesh and blood enemies, but against evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against mighty powers in this dark world, and against evil spirits in the heavenly places. You may think you have a physical problem with somebody's attitude, but it may be that they have something going on that's not natural, or it's a bad attitude. And it may be because of a spirit, as we see in the Word of God. It may be because something is telling them to act that way, or something they adopted that they feel gives them power to act that way. So in the face of this, you're going to have to be different. So today, I wanted to point out where we sometimes stumble, the things that trip us up. And it's no more summed up better than in this verse. For the world offers only a craving for physical pleasure, a craving for everything we see, and pride in our achievements and possessions. These are not from the Father, but are from this world. And this world is fading away along with everything that people crave. But anyone who does what pleases God will live forever. Let's break that down. Craving for physical pleasure. That's your physical desires. That could be food. That could be sex. That could be various and assorted things. But it's what your body craves, what your body thinks it needs. A craving for everything we see are idols. This is one I don't know, this is one of the big revelations I had about this. Those are our idols. Those are the things that we think we need to have to make us happy. And an idol is a representation of something we don't have. So if we're looking to be entertained, we turn to the idol of maybe TV. And the way we serve that and the way we talk to ourselves is that if we have a bigger TV, we can be more entertained. Is that true? I don't know. Doesn't seem to be. Because, you go over to someone's house and, you look and I've got a 65-inch TV, but he has a 74-inch TV. Holy cow. Think of the things that you could see with a 74-inch TV. Why, it may give me more happiness. How would I not know? I don't know. Or how about this one? This is a common one. There's nothing wrong with my car. It gets me forward and everywhere it goes. But then all of a sudden, I see that pretty nice looking Camaro over there. And I thought, man, wouldn't that be nice? Boy, I could probably use a Camaro. That'd be a lot better than what Fred over there has. You know, and I may even look better in it. I don't know. You know, I just never see myself in a Camaro. What if that's what happens? Or how about we hit a little closer to home? And you're maybe a farmer, and you look over there, and old Neil across the way there, he's got bigger silos than you. And you go to ask him about it. He said, "Ooh, man, that'd hold about 500 more bushel than what you got over there, Chief." And what's the first thing you start looking at? Price. Say, what would it cost to turn my silos into those pretty silos over there? We all have it. We all have a craving for something that we don't have. And this wasn't invented in our era of consumerism, and it won't end in our era of consumerism. The last thing is pride. And it seems to play a little bit in both of these things. Pride of life is the way that it's described in the King James. And that's when you've decided that you're doing okay. And it's where you start saying, maybe I deserve this. Maybe I need a bigger house. And you just decide, you start deciding what you're worth, so to speak. You start deciding what kind of an image I need to be setting out there. These three areas probably cover 70% of the problems that Christians have. And now I'll admit that that is a made-up number. It may be more 73, maybe more 62. I'm just going to say 70%. Because it seems like it's the root of a lot of the problems I've heard in the Christian world. And it's keeping the Christians powerless because we can't get past these three things. Let's go into some examples. It doesn't take long when this old earth is created and we see every one of these things exhibited in one of the first sins. We turn to Genesis 3, 5, and 6. And the serpent is here speaking to Eve about that apple off that tree that they can't eat from. Let's listen to him. He said, God knows that your eyes will be opened as soon as you eat it, and you'll be like God, knowing both good and evil. Planting ideas. And what's it say after that? The woman was convinced. She could see that the tree was beautiful. And I put that in bold, but it's not as great here on this gray. The tree was beautiful. And in other words, an idol. And its fruit looked delicious. Physical craving. And she wanted the wisdom it would give her. She wanted to be like God. Don't I deserve it? I'm taking care of his garden. Why is this fruit denied to me? I don't know. I run the whole garden. I can't have that tree. Right off the bat, we see that it appealed to her. A man not looking to start a fight said, sure, hand me one. And he just kind of lets this pass. But right there we see that these three things came into play in the very first sin that was committed. The first time we said, I don't need God. The first time that people decided that they needed something other than the presence of God in their life. Maybe we got better though. Maybe we got better. So we're going to fast forward probably about 2,000 years. And there's a man who God set upon the throne, who spent his childhood yodeling out on the plains to how great God was. Who was later called a man after God's own heart. Let's see if he can maybe do a little bit better. 2 Samuel 11, 2-4, it says, late afternoon, after his midday rest, David got out of bed and was walking on the roof of his palace. As he looked out over the city, he noticed a woman of unusual beauty taking a bath. He sent someone to find out who she was, and he was told she is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite. Then David sent messengers to get her, and when she came to the palace, he slept with her. He looked out over the city, surveying all that he was over. Took a big, nice, long look. Look at this beautiful city that I have here. Sounds a lot like Pride. And what he saw was a beautiful woman. Now, what is unsaid in this is that David had many beautiful women already in his house that he was betrothed to. Women that came with other nations as a way of sealing their thing. And he had many. But here is one I don't own. Here was one that's not in my thing. Here was that one that's not mine. And so what does he say? He has an idol there. And he goes out and he looks, and she's the wife of Uriah the Hittite. And in other words, she's an idol. She's unattainable. He can't have her because she's someone else's wife. Guess what? That didn't stop David. He's the king. He doesn't have to listen. And he allowed himself to be robbed of his spiritual authority and be made a parody of Mel Brooks' The History of the World, where the king says, the King Louis of France says it's good to be king because you can just do whatever you want. He's made a parody of the person of God. Let's see what happens to him. Next slide. So the Lord sent Nathan the prophet to tell David this story. Where was David? Well, David was back in the seat of his authority. He was sitting on his throne. The surveyor of all that God had given him. The spiritual head of Israel. He was back in authority. He wasn't David the coward hiding on a roof, dealing with his own problems. He was now back in his official seat. Much like a pastor who does something in secret, but then comes back up here in front and preaches to people as if he doesn't have his problems of his own. So he's sitting on his seat, and Nathan the prophet, the voice of God, so to speak, comes to see him. And he wants to tell David a story. He said there were two men in a certain town, and one was rich and one was poor. The rich man owned a great many sheep and cattle, but the poor man owned nothing but one little lamb that he had bought. He raised that little lamb, and it grew up with his children. It ate from the man's own plate and drank from his cup. He cuddled it in his arms like a baby daughter. And one day a guest arrived at the home of the rich man. But instead of killing an animal from his own flock or herd, he took the poor man's lamb and killed it and prepared it for the guest. David, in his spiritual authority over the nation of Israel, guess what? He gets upset. Oh, better not happen in Israel, he said. Listen to this. It says, as surely as the Lord lives, he vowed, any man who would do such a thing deserves to die. He must repay 4 lambs to the poor man for the one he stole and for having no pity. David's ready to put the sword to the guy's throat. In my kingdom? This guy would do this in my kingdom? Well, just let him come by. I'll put him straight. And you almost see Nathan. He probably cracks a smile and just thinks, oh, buddy, you're in for it. Then Nathan said to David, you are that man. The Lord, the God of Israel, says, I anointed you king of Israel and saved you from the power of Saul. I gave you your master's house and his wives and the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. And if that had not been enough, I would have given you much, much more. Why, then have you despised the word of the Lord and done this horrible deed? For you have murdered Uriah the Hittite with the sword of the Ammonites and stolen his wife. From this time on, your family will live by the sword because you have despised me by taking Uriah's wife to be your own. Back up one slide, please. The Lord, the God of Israel, says, I anointed you king of Israel and saved you from the power of Saul. I gave you your master's house and his wives and the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. But you're master of all you survey, aren't you? You did it all yourself. You fought those battles, didn't you? So the first thing Nathan does is remind David that he shouldn't have any pride because the Lord had given him that. By his sovereign grace, he took a shepherd boy from out in the field in the middle of nowhere and put him on the throne over not one but two kingdoms. He reminded David that the pride is going to have to go away. You don't have any pride in this situation. We were supposed to have beaten that years ago. And then he goes forward. Next slide. He goes forward and he says, you have murdered Uriah the Hittite. He's removed the path to his idol. He's removed the path to his idol so he can have it. He's acquired that idol, that thing that would make him feel happy, that thing that would give him everything that he supposedly has been missing, and stolen his wife. Indulged in the physical things. This is the man of God. This isn't Saul who just kind of came by the people's good choice. This was the man of God right here, chosen. And the good thing that David did is he didn't try to deny this. As you read on in the story, he accepts this. He realizes that God has seen him and is showing him that he had forgotten his personal spiritual authority and moved on into just tried to have authority without having the personal altogether. As Trey comes up, we're going to sing a song. I want you to think about that. Think about where I may be missing it. And we all do. I'm not, hey, listen, everyone, I had this app, and it was called Temu. Some of you may know about it. And the thing about Temu is that you'll get on this app, and they have the most useless stuff in the world, but you think you need to have it. And I've gotten things from it. I didn't even know what I ordered. I'm like, but at that point, I needed to have it. We all deal with this. But the first thing, the first step is we have to recognize that we all deal with this. As we sing, let's think about that, and then I'll come back up and we'll close.